Long before any modern technology, entire cities communicated through the deep hum of massive bronze bells. These were not simple noisemakers, but precision instruments, designed to send messages across miles of forests and mountains. By the end of this journey, you will understand how ancient engineers turned sound into a reliable language, one that united entire regions without a single written word. How did they encode urgent warnings in the rhythm of a toll? And why were some bells believed to hold supernatural power? What does it feel like to hear a signal that hasn't been rung for centuries? The sheer distance these sounds needed to cross dictated every aspect of their design. Unlike the sharp crack of a drum or the short range of a human shout, a bell's deep, resonant hum could roll for miles, bending around hills and seeping through dense forest canopies. This was acoustic engineering on a grand scale, and it all began with the choice of material. Bronze was not selected by accident. This specific alloy of copper and tin possesses a remarkable crystalline structure that allows it to vibrate with a clean, powerful, and long-lasting tone. Artisans would spend months, sometimes years, crafting a single bell, carefully calculating its shape, the curve of its walls, and its precise thickness. A bell that was too thick would produce a dull, muted thud, while one too thin might crack under the force of its own ring. The goal was to create an instrument that could project its voice with clarity and purpose, turning vibrations into a language everyone for miles could understand. This was the birth of long-distance communication, a network of sound that connected entire civilizations. This profound belief in the bell's power went far beyond simple superstition. It was woven into the very fabric of ancient life. In China, massive temple bells were cast with intricate inscriptions, not merely for decoration, but as permanent prayers. Legends tell of bells that, when struck with perfect intent, could summon life-giving rain to end a drought or calm a violent storm at sea. The sound itself was considered a sacred force, a vibration that could harmonize the chaotic energies of the world. Across continents in Europe, the mythology was eerily similar yet distinct. Folklore is filled with tales of church bells that would ring on their own in the dead of night, a spontaneous and chilling alarm that warned a village of an approaching plague or a coming invasion. People believed these bells could drive away evil spirits that brought sickness and misfortune, their holy sound creating a protective barrier over the community. These stories reveal a universal truth these cultures understood instinctively. They recognized that sound, especially a deep, resonant bell tone, had a direct and powerful effect on human emotion. It could stir a sense of awe, command immediate attention, or calm a panicked crowd. This symbolic importance made the bell the heart of a community. It was both a practical tool for gathering people and a spiritual guardian watching over them. This deep reverence is why such immense care, resources, and artistry were poured into creating each one. The bell was never just a piece of metal. It was a trusted voice for both the people and the gods they prayed to. This deep, resonant sound was a triumph of physics as much as faith. The effectiveness of ancient bells relied on principles of acoustics that we still study today. Think about the difference between a high-pitched whistle and the low rumble of distant thunder. That whistle is sharp and immediate, but it fades quickly, absorbed by the air itself. The thunder, however, seems to roll on forever, its powerful vibrations traveling for miles. Ancient engineers harnessed this exact phenomenon. They understood that low-frequency sounds, like those produced by massive bronze bells, lose far less energy as they travel through the air. This allowed a single, well-cast bell to project its voice across several miles of open countryside under the right conditions. but achieving that perfect, far-reaching tone was not a matter of chance. It was a precise science. Every single factor was meticulously calibrated. The shape of the bell was crucial. A slightly flattened, broader shape could push the instrument's voice into a deeper, more powerful register. The thickness of the walls had to be absolutely uniform. Any variation risked creating a dead spot that would muffle the ring. Even the composition of the bronze alloy itself was a carefully guarded secret, with specific ratios of copper to tin chosen to produce the clearest, most resonant hum. Master casters would spend days hammering the cooled metal, a process called cold working, to realign its internal crystalline structure and eliminate any microscopic cracks that could dampen the sound. This was a perfect marriage of art and science. It was this advanced knowledge that allowed a warning from a mountaintop monastery to be heard clearly in a valley village below, turning vibrations in the air into a lifeline for an entire region. This specific metal alloy was the absolute heart of the entire operation. While many materials can make a sound, only bronze could produce that perfect, far-reaching tone that defined ancient communication networks. Its unique combination of durability and malleability meant it could be cast into massive, intricate shapes without becoming brittle. But the true magic was in its acoustic properties. The crystalline structure within a well-made bronze bell allows it to vibrate in a beautifully complex yet controlled way, creating a rich tapestry of sound with a powerful fundamental note that forms the core of its voice. This was not a random mixture. The exact ratio of copper to tin was a secret science, often passed down through generations of a single family of bellmakers. Some legendary recipes even called for minute traces of precious metals like silver or gold, not for show, but because these elements could subtly alter the bell's timbre, adding a unique brightness or a softer warmth to its ring. The casting day was an event of immense importance, often treated with the solemnity of a religious ceremony. A pit was dug, a massive clay mold constructed around a core, and a furnace built to melt the metals. The entire community might gather, holding their breath as the molten bronze, glowing like captured sunlight, was poured into the mold. A single flaw, an air bubble, or an impurity could mean months of work were wasted. The bell that emerged was a rough draft. The final voice was carved into it by master tuners who would carefully shave tiny amounts of metal from the bell's interior. They would tap it, listen to its ring, and shave a little more, a painstaking process of sculpting sound itself until the pitch was perfect. This incredible investment of time, resources, and skill underscores a profound truth. These were not just noisemakers, they were the most valuable and sophisticated technology of their age, and their voice was worth every ounce of effort. Every curve and contour of a bell was a calculated decision in acoustic engineering. The overall size was the most obvious factor. A larger bell, with its greater mass and wider mouth, naturally produced a deeper, more powerful fundamental tone, the kind of low-frequency hum that could travel for miles. But this power came at a cost. A massive bell required an enormous amount of precious bronze, a stronger supporting structure to hold its immense weight, and a team of people to ring it. This forced a practical compromise in many communities, a balance between the desired range of the sound and the available resources. The shape of the bell was equally critical to its voice. A classic tulip shape, flaring outwards at the lip, helped to project the sound waves forward and downward, aiming the voice toward the people in the valley below. A more cylindrical design might focus the energy for a sharper, more immediate attack, perfect for a rapid alarm, while a conical shape could create a very specific, piercing tone. Even the smallest details served a purpose. Those intricate decorations cast onto the surface, they were not just for beauty. A raised ridge or a series of geometric patterns could actually reinforce the metal, preventing cracks from forming under years of repeated strikes. Internal ridges carefully placed by a master tuner could be used to subtly shift the harmonics of the bell, fine-tuning its voice for maximum clarity. And in many cultures, the inscriptions of prayers or sacred symbols were believed to weave spiritual power directly into the metal, amplifying the bell's purpose beyond the physical realm. From its overall silhouette to the finest mark on its surface, every single element was a deliberate choice, a fusion of material science, practical need, and deep cultural belief, all focused on a single goal: to make sure that when this bell spoke, everyone, everywhere would understand. But a perfect bell was only half the equation. Its true power was unlocked by its placement. To send a voice across entire valleys, the bell needed to be lifted high above the world, mounted in towers that scraped the sky or on lonely hilltops that pierced the clouds. Height was the ultimate amplifier. It cleared the sound above the clutter of buildings and the dense, sound-absorbing leaves of the forest, allowing those deep, rolling vibrations to travel in clean, unobstructed waves. This was the genius of ancient acoustic planning, turning the landscape itself into a communication tool. A bell placed on a high peak could be heard in villages dozens of miles apart, its sound echoing from one valley wall to another, creating a natural broadcast system. These bell towers quickly became the most important structures in any town, soaring above every other building. They were feats of engineering in their own right, designed from the ground up to withstand the immense, rhythmic force of a swinging bronze giant. Their foundations had to be incredibly deep and stable to absorb the constant, powerful vibrations without cracking. The frames were built from the strongest timber or stone, often using intricate interlocking designs that distributed the weight and the shaking force throughout the entire structure. A poorly built tower risked collapse every time its bell was rung. Their silhouette against the horizon was a symbol of safety and order. They represented a community's ability to gather, to warn, and to protect itself. This network of high places, each with its own distinct voice, formed a continent-spanning web of sound long before the first wire was ever strung. This complex code transformed random noise into a clear and urgent language. The pattern of strikes was everything. A single, powerful toll might mark the hour, a steady and predictable heartbeat for the village. But a sudden, frantic, rapid-fire sequence was an unmistakable cry of danger, a call to arms that sent people rushing to the walls or fleeing to safety. A slow, mournful, and evenly spaced ring would wash over the community, a somber signal that a respected elder had passed or a funeral procession was beginning. These were the most basic words in this vocabulary of sound. In more advanced systems, the sequences grew incredibly detailed. A specific rhythm, perhaps 2 quick strikes, a pause, then 3 more, could announce that the annual market was opening at dawn. Another pattern, a long toll followed by a rapid series of shorter ones, might mean that messengers from a neighboring city were approaching the gates. This was not a language of whispers. It was a language of declaration, broadcast from the highest point for all to hear. Everyone in the region had to learn this auditory code, just as we learn to understand the meaning behind a siren's wail or a school bell's ring. The community's safety and social cohesion depended on this shared understanding. This sophistication elevates the ancient bell from a simple alarm into something far more remarkable. It was an early form of information technology, a network that transmitted specific, complex messages across vast distances without a single written word or visible signal. This intricate language of tolls found its ultimate expression in the bronze workshops of ancient China. The Zhou dynasty perfected a system of bell casting so advanced it would not be rivaled for over 1,000 years. Their masterpieces were not single bells but complete orchestras of bronze known as Bianzhong. These were elaborate sets of precisely tuned bells, each one producing two distinct musical notes depending on where it was struck. Arranged on wooden racks, a single player could command a wide range of pitches, moving far beyond simple alarms into the realm of complex melodies. This was the pinnacle of acoustic engineering. While these magnificent sets were central to royal rituals and court music, their purpose was deeply practical. The same clear, penetrating tones that harmonized sacred ceremonies were used to coordinate massive public works projects. A specific melody might signal the changing of shifts for thousands of laborers building a canal or a fortification wall. Another, more urgent sequence could ring out from a watchtower, a precise warning of rising floodwaters from the Yellow River, giving downstream villages precious hours to evacuate. The genius of the system was its standardization. Inscriptions on the bells reveal they were tuned to official, state-approved pitches. This meant a bell cast for one province would sound the exact same note as a bell in another, hundreds of miles away. A warning melody heard in one valley would be instantly recognizable in the next, creating a shared auditory language across the entire empire. This was a network in the truest sense, a unified system of sound that bound a vast and diverse territory together through the clarity of bronze and the ingenuity of its engineers. Across the scattered villages of medieval Europe, a different kind of bell network thrived, one woven into the very rhythm of daily existence. The church spire was not just the tallest point in any settlement, it was the community's vocal cords. Each bell within the tower had a name, a personality, and a very specific job. A small, high-pitched bell might ring the Angelus, calling the faithful to daily prayer with a gentle, familiar chime. But the great tenor bell, the largest and deepest of them all, was reserved for moments of grave importance. Its voice was one of immense power and gravity, a sound that could shake the very stones of the streets and send a chill down the spine of everyone who heard it. This was the alarm bell, and its purpose was singular and vital. When sentries spotted raiders on the horizon or smoke from a distant fire, the bell ringer would not simply pull the rope. He would unleash a specific, terrifying rhythm known as the Tocsin. This was not a melody, but a frantic, pounding, and relentless assault of sound, a sonic scream that cut through the noise of everyday life to deliver one unmistakable message. Danger is here. The code was understood by all. That urgent, chaotic ringing would send farmers dropping their tools to grab weapons and form a militia. It would send women and children running for the safety of the church or the fortified manor house. In an era without instant communication, this was the fastest possible way to mobilize an entire population for its own defense. The creation of such a bell was itself a monumental act of community. The casting of a new great bell was a civic project that could take years. Every family in the parish might contribute old metal coins, broken tools, or even precious jewelry to be melted down into the alloy, literally investing a piece of themselves into the instrument that would protect them. The day it was first rung was a moment of immense pride and profound relief. This deep integration transformed the bell from a tool into a symbol. Its voice fostered a powerful collective identity among people living in isolated hamlets. To hear your own village bell was to be home. To hear a neighboring village alarm bell ringing across the fields was a signal to be ready, to be vigilant, to be part of something larger than yourself. It was the sound of security, a bronze promise that you were not alone. This belief in the bell as a living guardian gave rise to some of history's most captivating legends. Folklore from around the world is filled with tales of bells that possessed powers far beyond simple communication. One of the most enduring myths speaks of a magnificent bell forged for the wise King Solomon, an instrument said to be inscribed with the true name of God. Its ring was believed to have absolute authority over demons, commanding them to do the king's bidding or banishing them back into the darkness. Across the cold seas in the Nordic traditions, stories were told of ancient church bells whose clear, pure tones could shatter wicked enchantments and break the spells of malevolent trolls, their sound creating a sacred barrier that evil could not cross. These narratives often attributed such incredible power to a divine blessing upon the metal or to a secret, magical art known only to a legendary master caster. But perhaps the most haunting and widespread belief was that bells could act on their own volition. Countless villages had a story of the bell that rang by itself in the dead of night without a living soul near the rope. This spontaneous peal was never considered an accident. It was a dire omen, an autonomous cry of alarm from the guardian spirit of the community, warning of an approaching plague, a coming invasion, or some other unseen catastrophe. While we understand these as myths today, they are not mere superstition. They are a profound testament to the sheer awe these instruments inspired. The deep, pervasive sound of a great bell did not feel like a man-made noise. It felt like the voice of the world itself, a physical force that could harmonize with the divine or ward off chaos. These stories enrich the cultural tapestry, cementing the bell's role as the ultimate mediator, a trusted voice standing between the fragile human realm and the vast, unpredictable supernatural world. Even the most perfectly cast bell could be silenced by the wrong landscape. The terrain itself became a partner or an obstacle in this ancient communication network, shaping every message that traveled across it. Sound waves behave in fascinating ways, bending and flowing over certain surfaces while being swallowed by others. A bell placed on a flat, open plain could send its voice unimpeded for miles, the vibrations rolling outward in a near-perfect circle. Over a calm body of water, that same sound could travel even farther, the smooth surface acting like a mirror that reflected the waves and carried them incredible distances. This is why so many coastal watchtowers and lighthouse bells were so effective, their warnings skipping across the waves to sailors far out of sight of land. But the world is rarely so accommodating. A dense, leafy forest acts like a massive sponge for sound, with every branch and every needle absorbing a tiny bit of energy from the passing wave until the message fades into a whisper. A single, solid mountain could block a signal entirely, creating a vast zone of silence on its other side where a village might never hear the alarm from their protector bell. Ancient planners were the first true acoustic engineers, and they learned to read the land like a map of sound. They understood that a river valley carved deep into the earth could act as a natural megaphone, funneling and amplifying a bell's voice along its winding course. A narrow pass between two mountain ranges could channel sound for dozens of miles, creating a clear auditory highway through otherwise impassable terrain. This deep, intimate knowledge of local geography was not written in any book. It was a living science passed down through generations of watchmen and bellkeepers. They knew exactly which hill to climb to hear the distant monastery's evening prayer, and which valleys would go dark if the main bell fell silent. In the most challenging regions, this knowledge led to the creation of relay networks. A watchman stationed on a high peak would hear the faint, far-off toll of a warning bell. He would then trigger his own local bell, repeating the message and launching it anew, allowing the alarm to leapfrog from valley to valley, from village to village, until it reached the ears of those who needed to hear it most. This was a system built on harmony with the environment, a testament to human ingenuity using the very shape of the earth to ensure that no one was ever truly left in the dark. This shared rhythm of sound forged a powerful sense of belonging. The bell's voice did not just warn or inform, it celebrated and unified. Across countless cultures, the ringing of bells was the heartbeat of the most important rituals, marking moments that defined a community's entire year. Imagine the first day of spring, when a chorus of bells from every village and temple would ring out across the thawing landscape, a joyous announcement that the long winter was finally over and the planting season could begin. Or picture a coronation day where the great bells of the capital city would peal for hours on end, their triumphant sound rolling over the countryside to announce the birth of a new era to every last subject of the realm. These were not isolated events. They were shared experiences heard simultaneously by people in different towns, all pausing their work to listen to the same powerful message resonating through the air. This created a profound psychological connection, a feeling that everyone was participating in the same momentous occasion, no matter how far apart they lived. The sound itself became a binding agent. A farmer in his field and a blacksmith in his shop miles apart would both hear the noon bell and know it was time to break for their midday meal. A specific sequence of chimes on a market day would signal to people in 3 different valleys that the gates were now open and trade could commence. This auditory synchronization allowed for a remarkable coordination of daily life across an entire region, all without a single clock or written schedule. The bell was the original timekeeper and social coordinator. Its predictable, reliable voice created a framework for existence, a rhythm that everyone moved to. This is how bells transcended their physical form to become something much greater. They evolved into powerful symbols of communal life and shared identity. To hear your village's bell was to know you were home. To hear a neighboring village's bell joining in a festive peal was a reminder that you were part of a larger, interconnected world. The sound wove an invisible thread through society, connecting the isolated farmstead to the bustling town center, the humble laborer to the ruling noble, everyone united under the same sky, listening to the same bronze voice. The creation of a great bell was a profound community undertaking, a project that could define a generation. This was not a task for a lone artisan or a small workshop. The sheer scale of the endeavor meant that every single person in the town or village had a role to play, a stake in the outcome. Funding such a massive project often required years of collective saving. Families would donate their spare coins, their old bronze tools, even broken jewelry and heirlooms to be melted down in the communal furnace. This act of giving was deeply symbolic, for it meant that the final bell would literally contain a piece of every household, a physical manifestation of the community itself. Long before the first mold was built, the project was already woven into the fabric of daily life, a shared dream of security and identity. The spiritual dimension was ever present. Priests would bless the gathered metals. Special prayers and ceremonies were held to ask for divine favor on the project, to ensure the purity of the metal and the safety of the workers. This was not mere superstition. It was a recognition that they were attempting something monumental, something that required harmony between human skill and forces beyond their control. The master bell founder, a figure of immense respect, would arrive with his team of specialists carrying secret recipes for bronze alloys passed down through his family for centuries. The first and most delicate stage was creating the mold, a multi-layered masterpiece of clay and horsehair built around a giant core. Skilled carvers would then meticulously etch the chosen designs, the prayers, the symbols, and the inscriptions into the surface of this clay, knowing that every groove would be permanently captured in the final bronze. This was where the bell's voice and soul were designed. The Day of the Poor was a moment of high drama and terrifying risk. A massive furnace was stoked to incredible temperatures, melting the community's donated metal into a seething, glowing lake of liquid bronze. The entire town would gather at a cautious distance, watching in a hushed silence broken only by the roar of the fire. On the founder's command, the crucible was tapped. A stream of molten metal, brighter than the sun, would flow into the waiting mold, a river of potential. Any mistake in timing or temperature, any unseen crack in the mold, and the entire effort would be lost in a catastrophic failure. The tension was palpable until the mold was filled. Then came the long, anxious wait for the metal to cool. When the mold was finally broken open, the rough, dark form of the bell was revealed. It was then carefully cleaned, tuned by expert hands, and finally raised into its tower. The day it rang for the first time was a public holiday, a celebration for everyone who had contributed. That first clear, powerful note washing over the crowd was the sound of their collective effort made real, a voice forged from their shared hope and sacrifice, ready to watch over them for centuries to come. This constant care was a solemn duty, not a simple chore. A single crack spiderwebbing across the bell's surface, or a mounting beam weakened by rot, could silence their most vital voice at the worst possible moment. The role of the bellkeeper was therefore one of the most trusted positions in any community. These individuals, or sometimes entire guilds of artisans, performed meticulous inspections after every major ring, running their hands over the cool bronze to feel for the slightest hairline fracture or imperfection. They listened intently to the fading hum, their trained ears detecting any subtle change in its tone that might signal internal stress or metal fatigue. In coastal towns where salt air accelerated corrosion, or in humid river valleys where moisture was a constant threat, this maintenance became a relentless battle against the elements. Special mixtures of oil and wax were carefully applied to the metal surface, creating a protective barrier that repelled water and preserved the pristine quality of the alloy. The internal components demanded just as much attention. The massive wooden stock that held the bell in place, the iron pivots it swung on, and the heavy clapper that struck its inner wall all endured tremendous forces. Any failure here could be catastrophic, causing the bell to fall or ring improperly. These parts were regularly checked for wear, lubricated, and replaced long before they showed obvious signs of breaking. This knowledge of preservation was a sacred inheritance, passed from parent to child within a single family for generations. They held the secrets of which oils worked best, how to polish without damaging the inscriptions, and the precise sound of a perfectly healthy bell. This unbroken chain of expertise is the only reason we can hear these ancient voices today. It was this profound, generational dedication to upkeep that transformed a beautifully cast instrument into a lasting legacy, ensuring that a bell's message would remain clear for centuries, long after the hands that first forged it had turned to dust. The surface of a great bell was never silent bronze. It was a living canvas, etched with the deepest hopes and fears of the people it served. Inscriptions in Latin, Greek, or ancient Chinese script wound around the crown, often prayers for protection or dedications to the patron who funded the casting. But the message went far beyond words. Intricate reliefs were carefully cast into the metal itself. A community living in fear of floods might adorn their bell with images of rolling waves or mythical water dragons, a symbolic attempt to tame the very element that threatened them. A town dedicated to a particular saint would feature their likeness, believing the holy image would bless the sound that followed. These were not random decorations. Every symbol was a deliberate choice, a permanent statement of identity and belief for everyone who would ever hear its voice. This visual language transformed the bell from a mere instrument into a sacred text written in metal, a declaration that this object belonged to this people, in this place, at this specific moment in history. The act of carving these designs into the mold was a ritual in itself, a final chance to weave intention into the alloy before it cooled and solidified for eternity. This belief in symbolic power was absolute. A bell inscribed with prayers was not just a device that rang near a church. It was considered a vessel that stored those holy words within its very structure, releasing them with every ring to sanctify the air and protect the listeners. This is why the loss of a community bell was considered a catastrophic spiritual blow, not just the loss of an alarm system. It was the silencing of their collective voice and the erasure of their shared identity, cast in bronze for all time. Yet for all their sophistication, bells did not stand alone in the ancient world's chorus of signals. Other methods competed for attention across the distances. On high cliffs, watchmen maintained beacon fires, great pyres of oil-soaked wood that could be lit to send a flash of visible alarm from hilltop to hilltop. These were brilliant for rapid communication over long visual lines, especially in the dead of night when a single flame could be seen for dozens of miles. Drums carved from hollow logs or stretched animal hides provided a portable and powerful alternative. A skilled drummer could send complex rhythms through dense jungle or across open savanna, their penetrating beat serving as a voice for nomadic tribes and marching armies alike. And then there were horns made from animal tusks or crafted metal, whose sharp, piercing blasts could cut through the din of a battlefield to issue commands to soldiers. Each system had its own distinct advantage. Fires were unmatched for sheer speed across a clear night sky. Drums were lightweight and could travel with people. Horns were immediate and direct, but each also carried a critical weakness. A beacon fire was utterly useless in the bright light of day or during a thick fog. Its message could be easily mimicked by a careless shepherd's campfire or a lightning strike, causing false panic. Drums, while portable, had a much shorter range than a massive bronze bell, their higher-pitched sounds absorbed quickly by dense foliage or rugged terrain. A horn's blast was sharp and urgent, but it was a single note with no sustain, fading almost as quickly as it began. This is where the bell's true engineering genius shone through. Its deep, low-frequency hum was remarkably resilient. Rain could not wash it away, fog did not obscure it. The vibrations could penetrate the walls of a home and seep through a dense forest canopy where a visual signal like smoke would be completely trapped. While a fire could be seen but not heard, and a drum could be heard but not seen, the bell's sound was omnipresent, surrounding everyone in its path regardless of where they were or what they were doing. This relentless reliability in almost any condition is what cemented the bell's role as the cornerstone of early warning systems. In a world where a single storm could blind a network of watchfires, the voice of the bell remained a constant, steadfast guardian. This relentless pursuit of acoustic perfection was a slow, deliberate evolution spanning centuries. Master founders were not content to simply replicate the designs of their predecessors. They became innovators, constantly tweaking and refining their craft to squeeze every last ounce of clarity and range from their bronze giants. One of the most significant breakthroughs was the discovery that a bell's voice was not a single note, but a complex chord of sound, with a dominant fundamental tone supported by a series of softer, higher harmonics. To control this chorus, founders began experimenting with the internal profile of the bell, carefully shaving the metal in specific zones to dampen unwanted harmonics and amplify the desired ones. This delicate process of tuning by hand and ear was a high art, turning a rough casting into a precision instrument. In some cultures, this led to the addition of secondary resonators, small chambers or tubes built into the bell's structure that would vibrate in sympathy with the main strike, enriching the overall tone and giving it a longer, more beautiful sustain. The very shape of the bell itself was refined over generations. the graceful flare of the lip became more pronounced, designed to throw the sound waves forward with greater force. The thickness of the walls was no longer uniform from top to bottom. A skilled founder would now create a subtle gradient, thicker near the crown where the immense stress of the swing was greatest, and thinner towards the lip to allow for a more responsive and vibrant ring. This was acoustic engineering in its purest form. In regions where resources allowed, this innovation culminated in the creation of entire carillons and bell choirs. Individual bells were no longer solitary instruments but were cast as matched sets, each one tuned to a specific note on a musical scale. A single musician could now play complex melodies and harmonies from a central keyboard, transforming the town's alarm system into a breathtaking instrument of public art. The driving force behind this centuries-long evolution was a powerful combination of urgent necessity and profound artistic ambition. Communities needed to be heard from farther away, and the message needed to be unmistakably clear. But the founders themselves were driven by a deep, personal pride to create something that was not only functional, but also beautiful, an instrument whose voice would be a credit to their name for generations to come. This vast repository of knowledge, these hard-won secrets of alloy mixtures and perfect shapes, was never written down in any manual. It was a living science passed directly from master to apprentice over years of grueling labor. A young student would learn first by sweeping the workshop floor, then by mixing clay for the molds, and only after a decade or more would he be trusted to touch a tuning hammer to the sacred bronze. This unbroken chain of mentorship, this rich tradition of craftsmanship, ensured that each generation could stand on the shoulders of the last, reaching for a clearer, more powerful, more perfect sound. The relentless peal of an alarm bell could mean the difference between life and death for an entire town. This martial application of sound transformed these instruments into essential tools of warfare and defense. Specific toll patterns were not just general warnings, they were detailed bulletins. A rapid, frantic ringing from a watchtower to the north clearly indicated the direction of the approaching threat, allowing the local militia to muster at the correct section of the wall. The rhythm itself could communicate severity. A steady, urgent pace might signal a small raiding party, while a chaotic, panicked clamor could mean a full-scale army was on the march. This auditory code allowed for a coordinated and intelligent response, directing resources exactly where they were needed most. In some cultures, distinct sequences were used to issue direct military commands. A series of 3 long, resonant tolls might be the signal for all able-bodied fighters to gather at the armory, while a single, mournful strike repeated again and again could order a full retreat, saving lives by pulling defenders back from a lost position. The sound itself was a psychological weapon. For the defenders within the walls, the deep, familiar voice of their own great bell was a rallying cry, a sound that stirred courage and solidified their resolve to protect their homes and families. For an attacking force hearing that same ominous hum rolling across the fields toward them, it was a demoralizing omen. It meant their advantage of surprise was gone. The defenders were awake, armed, and waiting for them. The strategic placement of these bells was a critical part of regional defense planning. Along coastlines, bells were mounted in high lighthouses and watchtowers, their low tones carrying far over the water to warn of pirate ships or invading fleets long before they could make landfall. Near contested borders, networks of bell towers were established on high ground, each within earshot of the next, creating a sonic shield that could relay an invasion alert deep into the heartland within minutes. This martial purpose underscores the incredible value these communities placed on their bells. They were not merely instruments of peaceful order, they were tools of survival, their bronze voices standing as the first and most vital line of defense in an uncertain and often violent world. This cross-pollination of ideas created a fascinating tapestry of hybrid designs. As bell-making traditions traveled, they rarely arrived unchanged. They were adapted, reinterpreted, and fused with local beliefs and materials. In the Philippines, Spanish missionaries found communities with no tradition of metal bells. Instead of importing heavy bronze casts from Europe, they worked with local artisans who used their incredible skill in woodcarving to create massive bell blanks. These intricate wooden forms were then used to make the molds for casting, resulting in bells that bore the distinct stylistic flourishes of Filipino artistry alongside the classic Spanish shape. This fusion created a unique sound and aesthetic, a literal resonance between the old world and the new. Similarly, in the Andes, Spanish bells were often recast by indigenous metalsmiths. These artisans incorporated symbolic patterns from their own cosmology into the decorations, weaving ancient beliefs into the new Christian instrument. A bell might feature a traditional Spanish cross on one side and an Andean sun symbol on the other, its voice serving two worlds simultaneously. This was not a simple case of one culture imposing its technology on another. It was a dialogue, a negotiation in bronze and fire. The result was a new object, one that held meaning for both the colonizer and the colonized, a complex symbol of a painful but creatively fertile encounter. The global journey of bell technology is a powerful reminder that no invention truly belongs to one people. Ideas are like sound waves themselves. They travel, they bend, they merge with other frequencies, and in doing so, they create a richer, more interconnected human symphony. The deep hum of bronze was eventually replaced by the silent click of a telegraph key. This new technology did not need to be heard for miles. It only needed to connect 2 points with a wire. A message that once took hours to relay across a chain of watchtowers could now travel hundreds of miles in mere minutes, unaffected by fog, rain, or the curve of the earth. The radio accelerated this change even further, allowing a single voice to speak directly into countless homes simultaneously, rendering the communal broadcast of the bell tower instantly obsolete. This was not a sudden extinction, but a slow and inevitable fading. One by one, the great bells that had overseen valleys for centuries fell silent. Their crucial role in daily life was stripped away. No longer would a specific rhythm tell farmers a storm was coming, for they could now hear the weather forecast on their wireless sets. No longer would the frantic Tocsin be the first warning of danger, for a telephone could alert authorities long before an enemy was even visible. These magnificent instruments, once the pinnacle of human engineering, were gradually retired, becoming beautiful relics of a bygone era. Many were melted down for scrap during times of war, their metal repurposed for cannons and bullets, a tragic end for a voice of community. Others were left to hang in their towers, silent and slowly succumbing to rust and pigeon nests, their purpose forgotten by new generations. Yet their story did not end there. A deep, nostalgic reverence for their sound ensured a new, more ceremonial life. The grand carillons in city towers and the solemn bells in places of worship continue to ring, not out of necessity, but to mark moments of collective importance, to stir a sense of tradition and shared identity. Their voice is no longer one of urgent practicality, but one of memory and emotion. This transition from essential tool to cultural treasure marks one of the most profound shifts in human history. We moved from a world connected by shared soundscapes to one connected by invisible, instantaneous signals. But in that change, we might have lost something intangible. We gained incredible speed and efficiency, but we let fade a technology that was felt as much as it was heard. a vibration that physically united a community under a single bronze voice. Silent for centuries, these bronze voices are now speaking to us once more. The quiet, meticulous work of archaeology is pulling them from the dust of history, not as mute artifacts, but as sophisticated machines whose secrets we are only just beginning to fully appreciate. The discovery of an ancient bell foundry is a moment of incredible excitement for researchers. It is not merely a workshop, it is a frozen moment in time. Within these excavated sites, they find the clay molds that held the shape of giants, often still bearing the faint fingerprints of the long-dead artisan who pressed them into form. They analyze slag piles and crucible fragments to understand the exact composition of the alloys, confirming the advanced metallurgical knowledge these founders possessed. Sometimes they are even lucky enough to find a failed casting, a bell that cracked during cooling. To a modern engineer, this flawed piece is a treasure, a perfect case study that reveals the precise limits the ancient masters were working against. Each fragment tells a story of trial and error, of a relentless pursuit of acoustic perfection. But the most profound revelations come from the bells themselves, those that survived wars, meltdowns, and the slow decay of time. Inscriptions cast into their surface are no longer just beautiful poetry, they are data. They can tell us the exact date of creation, the name of the ruling emperor or bishop who commissioned it, and even the names of the master founder and his apprentices. This turns a mysterious object into a historical document, anchoring it to a specific moment and place. Even the wear patterns tell a tale. A deep, smooth groove worn into the bronze by the strike of the clapper reveals how often it was rung, hinting at centuries of constant, faithful service. How must it have felt for the first person in 1,000 years to gently tap one of these recovered bells and hear its voice, however faint, echo once again in a modern world? That experience is no longer left to chance. Scientists now use advanced laser scanning to create perfect digital models of a bell's interior and exterior geometry. They can map every microscopic imperfection and variation in thickness. This digital blueprint is then fed into acoustic modeling software, which can simulate the bell's ring with astonishing accuracy. We can now hear the clear, commanding tone of a Zhou dynasty Bianzhong bell exactly as it sounded to a court official 2,500 years ago, or the deep, mournful hum of a medieval alarm bell that once warned of approaching danger. This technology allows us to move beyond guesswork and truly understand the acoustic genius of these ancient engineers. Museums around the world have become the new guardians of these bronze sentinels. Their efforts go far beyond simply placing a bell on a pedestal under a light. Conservators work in dedicated labs to halt corrosion, using specialized tools to stabilize cracks and preserve delicate inscriptions. Their goal is not to make the bell look new, but to preserve every mark of its long history, ensuring its physical story remains intact. This global effort to preserve, study, and understand is a testament to a growing realization. These bells are not quaint relics, they are the physical embodiment of our ancestors' ingenuity, their fears, their community spirit, and their desire to reach across the vast distances that separated them. By listening to their rediscovered voices, we keep a vital part of our shared human story alive, ensuring that their message is never truly silenced. That same profound emotional resonance ensured bells would never be confined to their towers. They echoed just as powerfully in the world of art, literature, and music, their sound becoming a universal language for human feeling. Poets have long been captivated by their dual nature, their ability to signify both joy and despair. Edgar Allan Poe's famous poem, The Bells, masterfully traces this entire emotional spectrum. He begins with the light, tinkling silver bells of sleigh rides and happiness, then moves to the golden bells of harmonious wedding ceremonies. But the poem darkens, shifting to the loud, brazen alarm bells that shriek out a cry of terror, before finally settling on the mournful iron bells that toll for the dead. Here, the bell is no longer an object. It becomes a living symbol of the entire human journey from birth to death. Visual artists, unable to capture the sound itself, focused on the bell's powerful presence. Painters like Vincent van Gogh were drawn to the humble village church, repeatedly sketching and painting its steeple. That towering structure housing the bell becomes the focal point of the community, a visual anchor in the landscape that represents faith, stability, and home. In these works, the bell is silent, yet its potential voice is felt in every brushstroke. For composers, the challenge was to recreate that iconic sound within an orchestra. They developed specific musical techniques to mimic the bell's unique acoustic signature. A low, sustained note from a tuba or a tam-tam gong can suggest the fundamental hum, while higher-pitched instruments like harps or celestas might play a sparkling pattern above it to represent the shimmering harmonics. In countless pieces of sacred music, the simulated sound of bells is used to signify the divine breaking into the human realm, a moment of awe and revelation. This enduring artistic obsession reveals something fundamental. The bell's sound bypasses our logical mind and speaks directly to our soul. It is a trigger for memory, for emotion, for a deep sense of longing or peace. Whether in a frightening peal of alarm or a gentle call to evening prayer, the bell became a metaphor for things we struggle to put into words. It represents the relentless passage of time, the solemnity of our own mortality, and the hopeful possibility of a call to something greater than ourselves. By studying how artists have wielded this powerful symbol, we see the final, beautiful transformation of the bell. It evolved from a practical tool to a community guardian, and finally into a timeless emblem of the human spirit itself. That deep, resonant hum does more than just travel through the air, it travels directly into our psyche. This is the true, hidden power of the bell, its ability to bypass our conscious thoughts and tap into a well of deep-seated emotion. Think of the visceral jolt you feel when a sudden car horn blares, a reflex of alarm hardwired into us. Now, imagine that same primal response, but channeled through the controlled, profound tone of a great bell. It commands attention not through sheer volume, but through a vibration you feel in your bones. This is a low-frequency sound, the kind that rolls through the body and can instantly alter our state of mind. In a calm, predictable context like the gentle call to evening prayer, that same vibration is incredibly soothing. It signals a time to rest, to reflect, to come together. But that exact same sound, played in a frantic, irregular rhythm, triggers a surge of adrenaline and fear. It becomes an undeniable signal of danger. Ancient societies understood this instinctively. They were master psychologists using sound to orchestrate the emotions of an entire community. The bell was their instrument. A specific, joyful peal could release a wave of collective celebration during a festival, while a slow, mournful toll would guide a community through shared grief, providing a sonic container for their sorrow. This was social cohesion engineered through vibration. The bell's sound became the soundtrack to every major life event, from birth to marriage to death, weaving itself into the very fabric of personal and collective memory. Even today, centuries after their practical use has faded, that power remains. Filmmakers and composers use the sound of a deep bell to instantly create a mood of solemnity, foreboding, or awe. It is a shortcut to our emotions, a cultural echo that still resonates within us. We are still responding to the same ancient auditory cues, proof that the voice of the bell is forever stamped upon the human soul. Their symbolic power now finds its greatest purpose in preservation. While the frantic Tocsin may never again warn of a real invasion, the deep voice of a historic bell ringing on a national holiday still stirs a profound sense of shared identity. Communities around the world have embraced these instruments as living monuments, pouring resources into meticulous restoration projects. Specialized artisans, often using techniques passed down for generations, carefully clean centuries of corrosion from ancient bronze, stabilize hairline cracks with precision welding, and replace worn mounting hardware. The goal is not to make the bell look new, but to ensure its original voice remains clear and true for generations to come. This work extends far beyond the physical object. Audio engineers use sensitive recording equipment to capture the unique acoustic fingerprint of each bell, creating high-fidelity digital archives. These recordings allow anyone with an internet connection to experience the specific tone of a bell in a remote Welsh village or a Japanese temple, a sound that once defined a local community now shared with the entire world. Even more remarkable, three-dimensional laser scanning and advanced acoustic modeling software can now recreate these sounds with scientific precision. Researchers can build a perfect digital twin of a bell, even one that has been cracked and silent for 100 years, and simulate its ring. We can now hear the exact sound that once guided medieval farmers home from the fields or warned a coastal town of a storm. This digital resurrection ensures that even if the physical metal is eventually lost to time, its voice and its story will endure forever. This global effort to protect and understand these bronze sentinels is about more than nostalgia. It is a profound act of honoring the ingenuity of ancient engineers and the communal values they served. It reminds us that long before the instant, silent ping of a text message, connection was a physical, shared vibration, a sound that literally moved through people, uniting them under a common purpose. In preserving these bells, we preserve a fundamental part of our own story, a testament to the timeless human desire to reach out, to warn, to celebrate, and to say, across any distance, that we are here. The story of ancient bells is a testament to human creativity and our relentless drive to connect across the vast distances that once separated us. These magnificent bronze instruments were far more than simple noisemakers. They served as the very nervous system of early societies, a living network of sound that bound people together across miles and generations. From their mythological origins as tools believed to command spirits and ward off plagues, to their astonishing acoustic precision engineered to send messages through valley and forest, bells were the heartbeat of community. They marked our most sacred rituals and sounded the alarm in our most desperate hours, their voices weaving an invisible thread of shared experience and collective identity. Though our technology has evolved into the silent, instantaneous clicks of the digital age, the deep legacy of bell communication still resonates within our cultural memory. It endures in the solemn peal of a church bell on a quiet Sunday, in the triumphant ring that marks a new year, and in our ongoing fascination with the power of sound itself. We hope this journey has deepened your appreciation for these bronze marvels and the forgotten art of listening across the landscape. If you enjoyed this exploration into the voices of the past, feel free to like, subscribe, and share your own thoughts in the comments below.